Hi everyone, my name is Sharifa Ismaili Alatas and I want to present to you about a chapter in the book Dreams of Disconnection from the Autonomous House to Self-Sufficient Territories. What I want to present now is from chapter 1, Capturing Territories Through Energy Distribution. The author is Fanny Lopez and this is the course material for reading response RSC 6911 in University of Florida in spring 2024. So the family of territorial technical networks can be divided into three major categories. The first is transportation, be it road, sea, rail, and air. And then the second is information and communication, be it telephone and information technology. And the third one is energy and resources, be it water and sewage and gas, steam, and electricity. In the industrial countries of the Northern Hemisphere, the organization of these basic services was gradually structured into large-scale networks and was central to the process of urbanization in the late 19th century. These networks became symbols of hygiene and convenience, representing transformed landscapes and lifestyle. The connection, which was progressive ideal, became the norm, supported by a group of laws, official documents, texts, and ideas, including those of public services, network member, and assistance policy. Wastewater treatment and energy supply technologies developed their basic forms in this period and have barely changed since. The history of the creation of the major networks is a web in which technical, financial, and political choices were entwined. However, this was not without certain ambiguities. It was a battle of technical models, scales, movements, and governance modes in which engineers and architects played a key role. About the network web, the symbolism of the network system is based on a paradox. It is simultaneously permits freedom of circulation, while it restrains, creates both abundance and dependence. Etymologically, network comes from the Latin nodus or knot. It is the net used to capture certain animals in hunting or fishing. We can see this in the figure 1 on the left hand, and then the vocabulary associated with the structure of link, hook, quill, ramification, web, and grid has always been part of the lexical field of captivity. For a long time, the network described a cluster of fiber, a fabric whose framework was linked to forms in nature. It was subsequently associated with the human body, with the discovery of the circulatory system in the 17th century, and we can see the images from the figure 2 on the right hand. The network materialized as a model that corresponds to the control of natural as well as artificial bodies. It was not unusual to see the principles transported from the human body to the urban landscape in an attempt to solve circulation problems. For example, in 1760, Pierre Rousseau proposed organizing the city of Nantes around a heart-shaped boulevard. We can see that in the figure 3 in this slide. This is the heart-shaped Nantes by Rousseau. And then the analogy between the urban body and the human body tested the new rationality systems based on the circulation of flows. For the physician or the engineer, the networks distributed and ordered these flows. However, it was also a metaphorical figure that could be applied to politics and power relationships. Plato used weaving as a model for government. The king was a weaver who interlaced and crossed the threads of power. The image of the network was subsequently more broadly used to designate a group of people or an organization connected in order to act together. In 1882, electrical energy was churned by the American inventor and industrialist Thomas Edison. The world's first electric power plant was built by the Edison Electric Company in the Wall Street area in Manhattan. In this figure ground and this map, we can see that Thomas Edison's Pearl Street Station distribution area in New York is being depicted in 1883. The power plant produced both heat and electricity for five apartment and businesses, and the other more powerful plants emerged in the United States and London would rapidly follow. From 1882 to 1886, experiments showed that electricity could be transmitted. In 1886, the distribution of electrical currency began in France, and in Paris, the first subscriber was connected to the Fijling network in 1889 from the Le Halles plant and the else. The press regularly reported on the economic upheavals of the new networks and the elation and doubts that accompanied them in France and the United States. By the early 1880s, the question of managing and rationalizing utilities was openly raised, notably in the illustrious New York magazine Harper's Weekly. In an illustrated article, Uncle Sam fights over the control of cables in front of the Capitol. We can see that in this slide in the figure 7. And then about entangled landscape, as a technical monument, the infrastructure held an important place in the graphic production of several architects and engineers, the most illustrious of whom was Piranesi. He was known for having defended the legacy and supremacy of Roman public edifices, whose specific beauty he sought to depict in his many plates. The spatial saturation effects and the dark intensity of his prison are especially noteworthy. Some historians have asserted that these prisons were inspired by the vast dimensions of the rooms of the first Roman sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, which was linked to the Tulanum prison. Sewers represents the underside of the city and have always inspired popular gloomy depiction. But from the 19th century, with the expansion of electricity connection among distribution systems, a new imaginary dimension of infrastructure appeared. Connection activated domestic practices and new urban representations. The extrapolation were equal to the revolutions of electrifications and other inventions of this century conquered by energy. The city was swept along by the enormous connection project. The land was visually transformed by both transportation and energy infrastructures in an accumulation of conduits, pylons, and cables. Illustrations revealed underground or aerial entrails, popularizing in legend and description of the city entangled, cable, or tied up. Numerous cutaway street diagrams were presented in the press and the explanatory manuals of water or gas services depicting the ground as the border that separates the city from its surface frame. The place of the road system and the car was essential to the culture of development. Unlike road networks, utility and energy networks were not specifically studied in the history of architecture. Starting in the 20th century, railroad clusters, axes, and highways hubs were thought of and built as architectural and urban objects. In many ways, the road replaced the conduits and pipes of the urban planner. It was observed that the energy network would most often be housed in the density of the road network, following its path and expansion model. Cerda's road system, presented for Barcelona in 1867, planned for drinking water, waste, and energy utilities, while the same was true for Arturo Soria y Malta's linear city, designed in 1882. The totality of the utilities are brought together in the density of the railroad axis, which created an extensive and territorial concept of urban development. Ildefonso Cerda, the first theoretician of urbanism and the designer of the plan of to extend the city of Barcelona, was above all a network engineer. In his celebrated Theoria General de l'Urbanisation, 1867, he was enthusiastic about adapting the materiality of the city to the technical and scientific progress of modern civilization. Cerda described how urban infrastructure and energy were a key factor in the advance of the 20th century city. Moreover, Serdar raised the problems caused by discharges from pipes outside the city. If the fast-flowing rivers of certain cities carried away these repulsive liquids without leaving a trace, he was very much concerned about the issues this would cause for those close to the sea. Eugene Hennard was a key proponent of these energy concerns. In Les Villes de l'Avenir, 1910, Hennard dealt with the chaotic varying of the networks, formulating a reorganization proposal in a section drawing that is now famous. Hennard acknowledged that underground space was saturated and that it was impossible to include new distribution system in it. A project was needed to reorganize these systems. To illustrate his proposal, he compared the section drawing of a street from the previous century to that of the future. The engineer Saturnio de Brito was a major figure of South American urban planning. He initiated the first sewage plants for dozens of Brazilian cities, presenting several of his concepts in Notes sur la trace sanitaire de Ville in 1915. In 1920, the urbanization of the Soviet territory depended on the electrification program. The Guerrero Plan proposed the construction of about 30 regional electrical power plants over 15 years to concomitantly ensure industrial development and the creation of new towns. One of the most powerful hydroelectric stations was the Dnieper in Ukraine, whose dam and adjoining buildings were designed by the constructivist architects Victor Vesnin and Nikolai Kolly in 1927. Following the end of the First World War, mechanization invaded the home sector, affecting the kitchen, the bathroom, and laundry. The use of mechanical controls of the home environment generated a number of technical, energy, and aesthetic problems. In Mechanization Takes Command, Siegfried Gideon highlighted the advance of the automation industry and presented mechanization as a phenomenon. Fascinated by the introduction of this new convenience in architecture, Gideon analyzed the effects of mechanization. The degree of modernity within the home was henceforth measured by the number of electrical outlets and its household appliances. The electrification of daily life was a founding element of the American way of life. The ideal of grouping together utilities into a prefabricated unit would strongly mobilize the industrial world. Starting in the late 19th century, a number of prefab houses were made, but it was not until the 1930s that this industry genuinely developed in the United States. The Second World War activated state control at every level of industrial output. The economity and urgency of the need for housing could not be met by traditional construction techniques. Large-scale industrial production appeared as the logical solution to fill such enormous demand. Post-war American architecture adapted the techniques and materials developed by the military industry to home use. The efficiency of industrial production under the pressure of war conditions had to be extended in peacetime to meet new needs. Most of the prefab proposals made the rationalizing of the mechanical core the basic requirements of their success. This explains the compositions of the photographer and graphic artist Herbert Matter, published in a special issue of the Arts and Architecture Journal titled Prefabrication in 1944. On the first page, a transparent human body reveals its internal organs and its nervous, blood, muscle systems from three angles. The correspondence between this anatomical image of the body and the first representation of the network can clearly be seen in figure 21 on the left hand. This vital network is directly analogous to that produced by atoms, the sun, or the electricity circuits, the whole forming a single large network. On the other page, the question, what is the house, offers an assembly of mechanical cogwheels as a response. We can see that in the figure 22 by Herbert Matter on the right hand. And then among the large number of utility walls proposed, the kitchen bathroom package designed by Charles Illock or that of the American architect Ralph Robson and David Reynolds from the Fabric House are worth noting. Also available on the market was the two-story Unit A by Howard, built in Datchet, Berkshire, which was quite close to the principle and form of the Denham plumbing and heating system unit produced by Froh and Sons and created by Gravely and Warren, both planned for a two-story house. We can see that in the figure 24 on the left hand. In this example, the mechanical core clearly appears as an independent unit around which other rooms would be arranged. In 1946, the Borg-Warner Corporation produced the Ingersoll Steel Utility Unit, which contained a particular complete unit with equipment and settings for electricity, water, and gas, with a forced air heater, thermostat, and an automatic water heater, conduits, and drain pipes incorporated into the prefab unit. That's all that I can present today about the material. Thank you for your attention. Don't forget to subscribe.